Welcome in. It's the PennLive Wrestling Podcast. Dustin Hockensmith here with Dave Heckard, back from a 2-week hiatus, for which I take full ownership of that. We got into team wrestling, district team championships 2 weeks ago, PIAA team wrestling championships last week. We'll cover all the bases from the team postseason, and we're going to take a real quick look ahead as we sit here today. We don't have all the information when it comes to sectional seeding and brackets, but we're just going to look at some of the weight classes that look like they could be some of the tougher ones in the area, both AA and AAA. So we got a lot of ground to cover here, Dave. And I wanted to just start, I think, with the PIAA team championships. What are you thinking as you're seeing Boiling Springs and West Perry and Bishop McDevitt all, I think, wrestle really, really well on that state team tournament stage?
No, I love how you accept your responsibility for falling behind. I appreciate that, Dustin. That's you're a man. You're a man. I love it. All good. No, you and I were talking here, and I felt like even heading into the weekend, looking at the teams involved, and I did feel that District 3 AA was definitely set up for a little bit of a better showing, you know what I mean, than the AAA side of things. And to be perfectly honest, I caught myself kind of checking out and watching a little more of the AA action, the more the tournament went on. I mean, all three of those teams, from Boiling Springs, West Perry, and McDevitt, I enjoyed watching compete. And I mean, each one of those teams, I sat down and watched different matches and different individual bouts. And I mean, first of all, people need to understand that state tournament, that team tournament, that's a meat grinder, right? Like, you wrestle Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you're not only wrestling like the best teams in the state, but usually on those teams are the best individuals, I mean, some high achieving individuals. So you had some good matchups and stuff, but I really enjoyed it. I thought, Boiling Springs grabbing the fourth place to at least, put a little checkbox in the District 3 column, between the AA and AAA to grab that fourth place medal. And that's kind of the Boiling Springs that we thought we had here. I felt like even in the district tournament, they lost to Bishop McDevitt, but we were talking and felt that they were the best team in the district because they just had a little more parity. And Bishop McDevitt out wrestled them in the district finals. I mean, plain and simple. But you saw Boiling Springs. I feel like that depth and some of their balance there kind of went out in the end. You know what I mean, in the team tournament there to the fourth place finish. And along the way, I mean, the teams they wrestled. Forest Hills, Saucon Valley, Burl. West Perry again to go beat a good West Perry team again. Benton, and then lost to Chestnut Ridge. I mean, that's a shelf of teams right there that West Perry wrestled, and the experience that they gained. You know what I mean? Boiling Springs, the experience that they gained through those dual meets. Hopefully pays off here for the individual postseason. But I mean, West Perry is the same way. West Perry had a nice win over Montgomery. Pretty tough team we saw at the kickoff classic. Lost to Chestnut Ridge in a fairly half decent bout, and then beat Faith Christian Academy down near Philly area 30-29 before they lost to Boiling Springs. And I just commend all of the District 3 AA side of things on their effort, man. It was fun to watch. And I'll tell you, McDevitt, in the match against Brookville, and I think even the match maybe before that, I can't remember who it was against, I feel like they were winning up top in two different points in the third period, 89 and 215. And I feel like in their last match, like both those guys ended up getting pinned. And I watched it, and you just saw the frustration on Mike's face. And I mean, we've all been there before, and but even them and again their backup 220 and did a nice job, I thought, battling. So I commend all three of those teams on the AA side. Provided me some pretty good entertainment there over the weekend, and I feel like some of them have some guys coming back are going to be pretty young, and hopefully can make some noise again next year and maybe find themselves a little higher on the podium.
Yeah, I think all three have a nice chunk of their lineups coming back. And, to your point about Boiling Springs, I felt like there were some guys in their lineup who wrestled better and better as the tournament went on. So it is an absolute grind, and you add that to the grind of districts and going right from districts, you know, in West Perry's case, competing on Saturday afternoon and then going up to Montgomery early Monday evening, and then right into all this. I mean, it's a lot of matches. I think I counted 11 matches in 14 days, and I think by Craig May, his standpoint, I think he said 7 to 9 weigh-ins, you know, 9 weigh-ins in 14 days. So like these guys battled hard and they did a lot of wrestling.
Yeah, they do. And that's the part, the weighing in, that I think we have to do a better job of figuring out how to decrease that number. You know what I mean? I mean, format wise, because that's where it gets difficult, because what you have now is, you know, postseasons this weekend. So you'll have guys, you know, dropping to get the postseason. So they have to weigh, they have to descend down, you know, so it's not like they can just weigh in at any weight above them. You know, they have to weigh a certain weight to be eligible for the postseason, and that can get difficult. And you know, sometimes I just feel like the you know the weigh-ins, that number needs to drop a little bit to help these guys out. But it, like you said, it is a grind, and you get a lot of good mat time, and you know, like wrestling. I mean, with that comes weigh-ins. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so, you know, in Boiling Springs case, one kid who really the best I have seen him wrestle all year was Jaden Barrick at 160 pounds for Boiling Springs. Not even close to that top guy in their lineup. Not the guy that if you're coaching against Boiling Springs, you're game planning around him. But he's also a pretty phenomenal athlete. He's a pretty strong kid. He's, you know, he wrestled really, really hard on day 2 and day 3. So kind of like an unsung hero to, you know, to Trevor being able to believe in him this whole way through and then get the best out of him. And I think, you know, he was one of the guys, and it was Sawyer Young, who their freshman at 132, who lost just a decision to a ranked kid from Faith Christian to help them lock up that duel against them. Faith Christian, you know, they're building something. With a lot of sort of highly regarded kids in their lineup. They got some holes, but you know, that was a really good win. I'm sorry, that was West Perry that beat Faith Christian, but
Right.
I think it was Benton, I believe, for Sawyer Young. But that was the most excited I had seen Trevor Byers pounding his chest and telling him how much heart that Sawyer Young showed, just to really battle with a kid and score the last takedown of the match. A kid trying to tech him, a kid trying to pin him, and he scores the last takedown of the match, I think, to make it like 8-3. He loses to a ranked kid. And I think those are the types of guys who can create a little bit of momentum. Yes, a lot of weigh-ins, a lot of wrestling, probably guys who are banged up, who have to turn around in 6 days time and get their individual postseason started. But there were some, I think, good examples of guys who found themselves a little bit towards the end of this.
Yeah, you said it perfect. That's exactly what I was thinking in my head. You know, you go through that day, and sometimes you don't have time to sit around and think about who you're going to wrestle. You know, so in Jaden Barrick's case, I mean, here's a guy that finally goes out. He learns something learns something about himself a little bit, and hangs in there and gets some nice wins. And you know, I expect, you know, some of the wins that he had to kind of help him. You know, here come this postseason, which we'll talk about a little later. But yeah, I agree with you heartily on that. The idea of him learning through that, and like you said about the Sawyer kid, you know, at the end getting the takedown, and Trevor being excited. I mean, that's what's fun about team wrestling, right? Like, you know, you're not the best guy in the team, right? But you can still contribute to that team and to that outcome by not even winning, right? Like by holding a guy to not a tech fall, or holding a guy to a regular decision. And to me, that's the best part about the whole team wrestling situation is everybody has a role, you know, and if everybody does their role and everybody does their job, you know, in that pursuit to win, I mean, you know, it's a good feeling. So and you saw that throughout the tournament, and really, and every team that experienced success at one time or another, somebody, an unsung hero, or somebody did their job that we might not even have known. You know, we just saw a guy go out there and get beat, but you know, maybe that guy that was supposed to pin him and he just got beat. And you know, that happens all weekend. And any of these teams that achieve, you know, high place finishes at the team tournament, that's happened to them all along.
Another good one here for West Perry is you obviously know the big guys for this lineup. Um, there were two matches. I think it was Faith Christian and again against Boiling Springs, where they had a kid who's wrestled 215 and 285 based on whoever they like the matchups. Brad Morrison's going to go hunting for 6. Loyal Carver is the kid who had pins in back-to-back matches that were really, really meaningful. They didn't end up beating Boiling Springs, but the way that match started against Boiling Springs, they needed something big to happen in the upper weights. And Loyal Carver, who got pinned by Jacob Scott from Boiling Springs in 17 seconds the last time he wrestled him, gets a pin for his team. And you know, like I said, it didn't end up winning the duel, but it made it a duel again. When Wes Perry saw Nolan Ziegler lose, when they saw Tucker Seidel lose and Ty Morrison lose, just going head to head with these really good Boiling Springs wrestlers to start that thing off, they needed something big, and he delivered on that one. I think Wes Perry got some similar performances, all up and down to make a really good run. And I think they wrestled so well against the rest of the top teams that they competed against. And then it just kind of figures that they run into Boiling Springs, who are just not a very good matchup for this Wes Perry team at all. I mean, Boiling Springs, to their credit, isn't a very good matchup for almost any team because they've got depth and they've got pieces pretty well balanced all the way up and down.
Yeah, when you go through and you say this one team's not a good matchup for this team, not a good matchup for this team, maybe they're just a good team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But in some sense, so is Wes Perry. But you're exactly correct. And looking at that dual meet, Wes Perry does match up, or Boiling Springs does match up extremely well with them. So, and you saw that kind of, that's what kind of ended up happening again. And Boiling Springs just kind of won out there, but. It's funny how you wrestle a good team and it's tough to beat a good team 3 times, but to do it in different ways. You know what I'm saying? And where you pick up points in different ways, and the other is very interesting. And says a lot about both of them. Battling back and forth, and like I said, I think all year Wes Perry and Boiling Springs and McDevitt for that matter have done a great job. I feel like for District 3 AA.
A couple other highlights here for Wes Perry. Brad Morrison, I talked to him because his job has been go pin a kid. That could be at 215, that could be at 285. His job all season, and there's probably there's some pressure in that, but he was comfortable in it. Go out and get a pin. We need 6 from you, Brad Morrison, and he has gone out and delivered. But he got a chance against Faith Christian to move up to 285. And wrestle the kid Leo Muzica, who's a former 215, who's now 285, kind of that in between. That guy who weighs 235 pounds is kind of a big, strong, but athletic kid at heavyweight. He's ranked number 3 in the state. Morrison gives up the first takedown of the match and just kind of hangs in there and takes that match over. And, I thought for him to get a match like that against a kid who's so big and strong, and to get that 6 minutes in against a state caliber kid, really big for him, because he even said it after the match. He said, I needed to see if I could go 6 minutes again because it's been so long. He said he hadn't wrestled a full match since December before this. So you think about that role and getting a match at this time against a kid like that to get his legs back under him again.
Yeah, no, I didn't know it was since December. I knew he was on a pretty big streak there as far as matches ending early. I was unable to watch that match. I didn't catch that bout between him and a kid from Faith Christian. But again, the idea of him getting tested here before the postseason, the individual postseason, because guess what? I mean, he's going to have to go 6 minutes here and win matches to medal here in the postseason and have a good, end of the year. So, and especially against a bigger guy, a good, number 3 guy in the state. I mean, that's a nice win. And again, I mean, you want to go there and you want your team to win, but it's good to get those matchups for your good guys, because you do get an opportunity to get against some teams that are, traditionally powerhouses and traditionally have some good guys. And, and seeing guys like Brad take advantage of that and Wes Perry take advantage of that is good. To get those matchups for your individuals. And yeah, I mean, and again, it helped obviously the win there because they won by a point,
Yep. Needed everything they could get from those guys.
Yeah.
Jackson Rush from West Perry, I think maybe the biggest individual outcome of this entire tournament, our area, any area, was him pinning Louis Gill, who, he's a sophomore now, won a state title as a freshman at 106. He's back at 106 this year. He's ranked number 3 in the country. He hadn't lost at all. He bumped up to 120, and I had heard he weighed in around 109 pounds to do that. I was laughing with Jeff Upson from PA Power because there were people all over him saying, "Oh, this is a big deal," who are saying, "No way. He bumped up 2 weight classes to get that." My question to you is, at what point is it not a big deal for a undefeated state champ to get pinned? Like what
Always
weight?
a big deal.
That's what I think too. If Louis Gill's wrestling 285 and he gets pinned, okay, all right, then I'll brush that one off. But he's wrestling 120 pounds. He's a pretty big kid as it is. I know he's given some weight away, but he got pinned. And this is an interesting thing too. Like, there's no time for you as a coach to really game plan 2 opponents away. Like, you're just so focused on this one match ahead of you because you have to be, that I feel like Hickory's coach probably didn't really have the scouting report that you don't necessarily want to go bottom on Jackson Rush. His best position is on top. Maybe they do something differently, or maybe they just say, you're a state champ, you're undefeated, you're nationally ranked, go bottom and get out. That's your job.
The expectation, I feel like you have a state champ. I mean, he's winning. They didn't put him there with the thought that he would lose or save points. I mean, they bumped him up 2 weights with the expectation that, they didn't want to put him up to Jackson, you know what I mean? And that, offers a whole slew of problems, but then maybe go up 2 weights and take them out there while collecting, points with somebody else at 106. But I think anytime you get a win against a state champ, I don't care what weight it is. That's impressive. I mean, you can only, it's part of the rules. I mean, you can only bump up 2 weights. So it's within a frame, you know what I mean, of where you weigh in and what you can do as far as how far up you can wrestle. So he would have had to weigh in at 113 and go up to you know what I mean, to 120 to get that match in. I was watching the match here, and when he pinned him, I'm like, wait a second, like that's not supposed to happen. Like I kind of, chimed in a little bit, like about a minute into it, and I'm watching it because I was checking out the West Perry score, and I saw him pin him. I'm like, wait a second, I feel like that other guy is pretty good, but I thought he was at 106, and I texted you, I said that was a big win, and it was a big win for him, and I think you have a state champ on your team in Hickory's defense. You expect to put them out and them to do their job, whatever that may be, right? And obviously getting pinned wasn't that guy's job. Now, the one thing I do want to say is 106 is a big difference than 113 and 120, just with, even who you compete against, the age of the kids you compete against, obviously the size and strength. But, and look, it's wrestling. And that's the best part about wrestling is you can pin people that you can't beat. I mean, here's a guy, Jackson Rush, and I'm not saying he can't beat him, but, he did pin him. And I mean, I think that in theory, that's why wrestling is what it is, because, you can end a match immediately, in a football game and in a baseball game, you're playing that out, in wrestling, again, you can pin people you can't beat. And he did that.
It's like in football, if you're down 56-7 in the 4th quarter, but you can win it on a Hail Mary. That's the equivalent.
Yeah, right.
How would that change the game? But yeah, I think Louis Gill is a really good kid, and I think they're probably trying to get every point they can to try to push for 4 there. He's up 4-1, I think, at the time. So you make it 5-1, you get out quick, you make it 7-1, and then maybe you're hunting a couple takedown, let him up situation, and you're in major decision territory. That's just been, with the construction of West Perry's lineup, and with it being known that they're giving away 6 at 106, Hickory's one of the teams that had a really good backup 106 that they could maneuver like this, but they're not the first team to send somebody up to 120 to bypass Devin Jackson. And I saw the same thing. Mason McClendon, who was a district champ from Susquehanna, went up to 120 from 113. Not quite as big of a jump weight wise, but and Jackson Rush pinned him too. Really similar situation. So you play with fire a little bit, and that's one of the things that made those lower weights for West Perry. And what's going to continue making them tough is that there's a lot of freshmen all through there too. And Jackson Rush, he didn't shy away from the moment. He didn't spend 4 minutes of that match wondering how he was competing with the state champ, or he wasn't shell shocked by it being a state champ, wasn't deterred by being down and sort of mathematically having a disadvantage being on top in the third period. Like, to his credit, absolutely hung in there, got his bread and butter in the third period, got a situation and took advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, kudos to him, man. That was, like I said, it was awesome. I watching, and you hear the crowd in the background, everybody going crazy. I mean, that's good stuff.
I love that. That's what you go to Giant Center for, is when you can feel the energy of something big and unexpected happening. That energy is hard to find anyplace else, even though, frankly, there just weren't a lot of people in the stands there. West Perry had maybe the most spirited cheering section at Giant Center,
I agree.
to their credit. Bishop McDevitt, real quick, I think for them to give up 6 at 106 the whole way through, for them to be, without Bryce Enders on day 2 and day 3. And he said that he's going to find out midweek this week if he's going to go in the individual postseason or if he's not going to go in the individual postseason. He weighed in, anywhere from like 182 to 185 pounds, wrestling 215. And, day 1, he wrestled a really tough kid from Burrell, who was, I think, ranked number 17 in the state at 215 pounds, or I'm sorry, he wrestled 189 for that match. So now they're without him, and they're without the 106. Their starter at 138 hadn't been with them. So, like, you're looking at this McDevitt team and saying, like, a lot of things kind of went wrong for them in the second half of the regular season and the postseason. And I thought they wrestled really, really tough. They had guys who came along and delivered. Hunter Wagner got a pin that won him a match. Tillman Artell played a huge part in them winning the district title against Boiling Springs, and then he got a big pin early at the state tournament. Michael Bootler at 113 are these are all three of these guys are young and wrestlers that Mike Nauman really, really likes, who help kind of eliminate that sort of, okay, Bishop McDevitt is giving away points from 106 to 138. Then you can't score on them from 145 up. They sort of, they morphed. And I think that narrative sort of changed because these young guys started wrestling tougher and tougher. And if that dynamic exists again next year and these guys keep wrestling it the way that they did, McDevitt's going to be a really strong team. And don't forget,
strong team.
Just from a district perspective, Boiling Springs is going up to 3A next year.
Wow. Yeah, that you say that, I forgot about that. But the other guy I liked from McDevitt, and back to again the lightweights of McDevitt, they tighten up a little bit. You know what I mean? They tighten their lineup up, and instead of giving up 6, now they're battling and they're maybe only giving up 3. Well, again, you give me the plus minus of pins and a dual meet and a good dual meet, and I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the team that gets the most pins. So now you have your lightweights going out there, battling and like you said, showed much improvement from, I felt, the beginning to the year till now. Even though, like you said, you had some things go wrong for McDevitt there with some injuries and whatnot. They still battle through, and their upper tier guys are they can wrestle. They're good, and I like the Gontis kid. I saw him, and I think he got hit in that elevator there against I forget, maybe Brookville, and that was a tough one for them. But I mean, he was winning in the third and got elevated. But he's a good looking kid. I mean, pretty strong looking kid, and if Enders can't go. Maybe not, do what Enders can, but I mean, he's not a bad fill-in. He's not a bad fill-in. And I thought, he did all right at times and looks good. I mean, looks strong and looks like he can wrestle. So, again, I'm like you said, I just feel like in years to come, McDevitt's going to be, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, not only in District 3, but I think the state too. And it's not going to take him too long to that happens. Battling with Stalkin Valley, battling with Notre Dame Green Pond and all that. So.
Yeah, they lost to Notre Dame Green Pond, who, that was a 51-9 match. And, they were just positioned, to really limit, they were beating McDevitt's good kids, not just limiting bonus. They were beating McDevitt's good kids. And when that's happening, and that's why when they're wrestling Brookville and Cade Warner, that's a 50-50 match. He was wrestling at 189 and he got cradled, kind of like a standing cradle, and got pinned with that. So there's 6. And then Gontis, that kid that he was wrestling was ranked number 5 in the state. And it's 2-2. He cradles him at the end of the second. And I thought, I think a pin could have been called in that situation. Didn't get it. And then I think the inexperience of being a backup all year, he wasn't ready for a scramble drill. When he got elevated, he wasn't ready for a scramble drill. He just kind of ended up getting stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I saw that, I was watching it, and I mean, that guy hit him, and I thought, oh no, and I wanted to see him like maybe try to fight out of it, and I mean, man, that dude grew roots into the mat. I mean, just boom, just I mean, the shoulder blades grew roots, man. It just stuck there. So but in some sense, that elevator, it's a weird feeling. You get kind of all twisted and turned around, and you don't know which way is up when you hit your back. But yeah, I mean, that aside though, I think he's got a nice little backup there at 215, or the Gontis kid. And I don't even, what year is Gontis? Do you know?
He's a senior, I believe, too. This is it for him.
Okay.
Yeah. And his dad had tracked me down at a couple duels and said, if Michael were, on a lot of teams, he could be a starter. And I really think he could make a postseason run. Well, we might soon get to find out if he gets to make that postseason run. I'm not sure about Ender's situation. I'm going to check in with him in the middle of the week and see. That would change the landscape completely. And, he made it pretty clear all along, Bryce Enders did, that if he were just competing for himself, he might not have wrestled this year. He was doing it because McDevitt had some high hopes and they needed somebody at 215 pounds. He wants to play football at the next level. He's going to do that at Edinburgh. That's where his kind of focus is and where he wants to be. He doesn't want to jeopardize any of that. So here he is, wrestling 215 and giving away 20 to 30 pounds on a consistent basis. And he's just doing it because he's filling in the gap. I'm not sure, if push comes to shove, like, is he gonna go into the individual postseason at 60% and want to compete, or would he maybe want to give that spot up to a guy who really wants it? I don't know.
Right. Are we going to see him? Yeah. At all. Yeah.
Let's look at Central Dauphin there in 3A. We had Dallastown and Gettysburg also from District 3. Cumberland Valley was the third place team from District 3. They lost opening night to Cannon Mac. Just a pretty terrible draw in its own right, and just a hard match. It looked like to get up for it, and Billy was without Jumper at 189 pounds. You're like, you've been through what Cumberland Valley's been through. You wrestled 2 days ago. You're without one of your, fixtures in your lineup. Not a real high energy environment. It's just one of those sleepy kind of things. Cannon Mac drove from 3.5 hours away and had maybe like 8 or 10 fans with them. It's just, it's a strange scene to try to get the most out of your guys. And they ended up losing there, but Central Dauphin, they lost to Abington Heights to get knocked out of the tournament. They lost to Greater Latrobe. Really wrestled Greater Latrobe pretty tough.
I thought so too. No, I mean, really Central Dauphin in that opening round, when I say opening round, I mean that round of 16, was the only team that I thought could win. Now, I will say this, like, I thought Gettysburg battled Williamsport. It was a pretty close bout. I think it was 1-point match. And I know there was some forfeiting and stuff at the end because they had it wrapped up. But here's the deal, like that, Gettysburg wrestles hard, and the Townsend kid, Jackson Townsend. I mean, in this tournament, man, he got pinned twice, and I mean pretty quickly, and against Williamsport, and I know that. I mean, that's one of your better guys, and for them, like that can't happen. I mean, he's got to go 6 minutes there, and I was kind of shocked to see that result, to be honest with you. You know what I mean, from him. And but I do got to give on the district level, I got to give Gettysburg some props, man. I feel like I feel like, and we were sitting at districts, and I sent you this text, and I said, looking at the floor here at Cumberland Valley, you have Dallastown, Cumberland Valley, Central Dauphin, and Gettysburg. Like, are we surprised? You know what I mean? I mean, at some point, like, those are the 4 teams that the AAA, District 3 title runs through. Right now, it seems like Gettysburg has a pretty good hand on that whole thing. Will that change in the future? Maybe, maybe not. I know they have some good young kids coming up too. But that being said, Central Dauphin beat General McLean in that opening round, but I mean, that was kind of it for District 3. And, I feel like on the AAA side a little bit, I feel like we District 3 is a little behind the 8 ball there, and I don't know. I don't want to say disappointing because, it is what it is. And when you're dealing with high school kids, they're what are they, 15, 16, 17 years old. I mean, and you don't know what you're going to get from day to day. Right. But I think, at the state tournament, we saw, kind of where we're at, and you saw an all District 11 final on both AA and AAA. And I feel like you're going to see the District 11, team thing. And then we're going to turn around and we're going to go to the individual tournament, and you're going to see the District 7 individual thing and the District 11 individual thing. And, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like District 3 is a little off the mark right now in some aspects. And, there's all kind of, I'm sure solutions that we can try to think of to get District 3 wrestling better. But, just for starters, I think the recognition that we are a little behind the 8 ball. And and that was evident in the state tournament. And let's be truthful. Last year, kudos to CD. I mean, they went out and they beat Becca and had a great little postseason run. But does Central Dauphin even get to that point if we are in a full year team tournament? You know what I mean? Where Nazareth is in, and where the District 7 2 and the District 7 3 teams are in. Is Central Dauphin even last year the third best team? And I would say probably not. I think Jeff would maybe admit that. And I don't know. But that being said, I don't know. It was tough to watch as far as like District 3 just getting out of the way they did. But either way, man, like I said, I know there were some close battles in there, but I wanted to see District 3 and AAA come home with a medal, and I think even heading into it, we kind of knew that was going to be a tall task. You know what I mean? So,
well, right off the bat, it was hard to argue with the fact that the top 3 spots you had essentially 19 teams competing for one spot. When you concede, Bethlehem Catholic was absolutely the best team, Nazareth was absolutely the second best team, and Waynesburg, the defending PIAA champs, were absolutely the third best team. And that's the way that things played out. And you were looking at the rest of the teams. Could Greater Latrobe make a run? They lost one of their star guys to an injury early in this tournament, which didn't help them. Mifflin County, I thought, wrestled pretty tough. Williamsport, you had experience wrestling that Williamsport team and kind of starting to see not the early makings of, but you could see those ingredients last year starting to come together for Williamsport. And they came together this year for them to wrestle into the consolation finals. And I saw Brian Nasdio, their coach, said something along the lines of, we were the top school among those who didn't recruit or have move-ins. And and actually that's a pretty good little segue, because
it is. It's an interesting take. And and look, this is a debate that goes on all the time in the wrestling world. People discuss the recruiting. Let's make no mistake. I mean, every team in that final, Nazareth, Becca, Saucon Valley, and even Notre Dame Green Pond, and there's others throughout there that, I mean, they get their fair share. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's different guys moving in and out of these schools, whether they're public or private. And I'm not saying like these coaches are going out and actively recruiting kids. I'm not saying that, but when you have a good program, let's take Nazareth, right? So let's say I'm in middle school and I'm up in District 11, and I go to I'm a great wrestler, right? And I go to a school up in that area, and let's see, there's a coach named Dave Kroll, who's arguably one of the best coaches in high school wrestling. Outstanding person. His kids are not only well trained, but he trains them to be good people too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like in middle school, I'm making that move if I'm at like a small school up there, or a school that's not successful in wrestling, and not that he's going out and recruiting those kids, but those kids are seeing what success he puts out, and they're going there. So even the Braxton Apello Freeze kid, I mean, that kid wrestled for Easton a few years back and is now at Nazareth, and yep. So any team that's achieving on that high level, like you're getting some guys. You know what I mean? Like you're getting some guys. And we were just saying, like, I feel like the team tournament should be divided into 3 classifications. You know what I mean? Like, I think team wrestling's hurting right now. And I feel like, you look at team wrestling. I mean, think about how many sports in Pennsylvania. I mean, heck, in football, there's 6 classifications. You know what I'm saying? And basketball and, wrestling has 2. And look, I get it. Like, everybody gets a medal, everybody gets a ribbon. Like, yeah, well, we're wrestling. Yeah, I get all that. But here's the deal. If more teams have an opportunity to go out and place at the state tournament, it's going to help team wrestling in the sense that people are going to be more into doing that. We're now like, okay, well, heck, we have to compete with Becca. We have to compete with Notre Dame Green Pond on the AA side. You have to. Well, I mean, and I get it. We'll go compete with them. Like, you work harder. Like, yeah, that's great. I get that. But in reality, it still doesn't help team wrestling. I mean, we're losing a battle here, and I feel like there should be more classifications in the team wrestling. And oddly enough, I feel like there should be just one in the individual tournament. I think that would be outstanding. But 3 classifications, even 4. I don't know. I just think the more you can get team wrestling, more opportunities for teams to maybe achieve that state medal, and do that. It helps the sport a little bit. And 2 classifications is tough. It's very tough. And I don't know. I mean, and I think also, we say, well, they recruit and they get kids in, but let's face it, like, those coaches at those schools are also good. So you're getting like the best of both worlds, right? Like, you're getting good coaching and top-notch kids. It's not like these kids are all just top-notch and they're moving to a school with a coach that doesn't know what's going on. I mean, Karam's been, he's a good coach, and the guy from Green Pond's been around. He does a good job too. And so I mean, I feel like you're getting the best of both worlds there. And what do? You're at Gettysburg. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody from Gettysburg's team is from that town of Gettysburg. And I think most public schools are in that boat. How do you compete with that? I don't know. I mean, I keep working, but again, the team thing, we want to see teams in District 3, reach out and achieve that state level and wrestle more teams across the state. Well, I mean, to do that, maybe divide it up a little more, you know what I mean? And give some of these other teams, give more opportunities, I guess, to do well in team wrestling. And again, I get it. I get it. Like, oh, we just, more ribbons for everybody. Like, I get it. I'm the guy that used to say that, but, taking a step back and looking at team wrestling, I think there needs to be something done, because we're losing a battle here. We're losing a battle.
I think that is true too. And there really isn't, a sweeping universal one size fits all. You do this thing and everything is solved. But there is a sense of dejection among coaches at schools where they have gotten what they feel like is absolutely everything they can out of the kids who are in their room. And they've gotten every kid in their room that they possibly can from their community, however big or small it is. And they are limited by something that's out of their control, which is other districts or private schools being able to kind of make upgrades a little bit more freely, a little bit more easily. And, to your point, there is, and this is why we are where we are. If you're a private school, not only, you have your wrestling or football, whatever the sport might be, the reputation or tradition you have, the coaching that you have there. And a lot of times the educational experience at those schools are a notch above where you're at too. So if you're a parent, you're going to want to try to give your kid, especially if he's a good football player, good wrestler, good basketball player, the best possible chance to be a successful athlete and student. It makes sense to go there. Like, if I have a kid who's a really, really good wrestler and I'm in a community where, maybe my program isn't going to develop in the way that I would absolutely consider everything, whatever, no matter what it says about. So there's a difference between parents seeking out the best opportunity and the word recruiting. Just
Right.
because a star
Right.
athlete lands at a school doesn't mean the coach went back channels, didn't break every rule in the book, all that stuff. Now, if a coach, or if, like, Notre Dame Green Pond with, they assembled essentially an all-star team, which is why the entire arena is clapping when that team loses. But, there are shades of gray, I suppose. But, just because a kid ends up at a school doesn't mean that it was done illegally. So, and I think there's just so much umbrella criticism, and it's just not like this situation calls for some kind of reform. And I just don't think it helps anybody to just like throw a blanket statement out there that all private schools cheat. Like
Right,
they're
right.
it's not the case, and it doesn't lead to a healthy dialogue about things that can actually be done to fix this.
No, I agree with you. And I mean, it is tough because, and people have to understand this too. Like, if a kid goes to another school, if a kid transfers to a private school, okay, and people say, well, how come, this school gets all these guys in, but this school doesn't, and they get called for it? Well, understand something. In order for there to be a hearing, in order for something to happen, the school in which that student is leaving has to file an injunction. You know what I mean? They have to be the one to go after that. And a lot of times what you have is when a kid leaves the school, I mean, some schools don't even care about wrestling. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
He might be leaving a school that doesn't even care about wrestling, but he's a real good wrestler. Well, the wrestling world's going, well, I mean, how come that kid's allowed to recruit? Because the school he just left doesn't care about, wrestling. I mean, they go. I mean, if you want to do that thing. Well, I mean, that's how that happens, right? So, and you hear people talk all the time, and, I can't believe that person was allowed. Well, understand, it's not even brought up if the school that they're leaving doesn't file that or doesn't, make that complaint. So, there's a lot of loopholes and ins and outs to it, but, you see the finals. I mean, you had Notre Dame, Green Pond, and Becca, the two private schools in District 11, and essentially Saucon Valley and Nazareth, which are two good public schools in District 11. And they got it done. I mean, District 11 final. To compete with that, I don't know. I don't know. I keep working, keep chopping wood. But I mean, even district-wise, Dustin, right? Like, so look at the District 3 AAA bracket. Okay, the number 13 team in our district got shut out by the number 5 team. Like Gettysburg beat, I'm power ranking wise, right? So, that's power rankings are what they are, but still at the end of the day, here's the number 5 team in the district shut out the number 13 team. So you want to talk about a big difference even there. I mean, within our district, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's why I'm even saying, like, dividing it up a little bit more, and maybe even by school size a little more, and breaking it down, and, opening up that playing field a little bit. So I don't know. So schools and communities can get a little more into their team wrestling and get behind it a little more when they know that they're not going to show up and just get, shellacked. I don't know.
And it's just an interesting thing, just to put a bow on it. If you're a coach, there comes a point for everybody in the team postseason of saying, can we actually compete for this? And what's worth it? What risks can I possibly justify to go a match further, or a round further, or to win a consolation match? As a coach, don't you have to have some honest reflection about how good you actually are, whether you can or can't get into that top 4, and just manage your team accordingly? Sit a guy if he's banged up. If he hurts a knee the day before, don't push it. I mean, I can't fault anybody for either way, but it does take probably a healthy sense of perspective to say, what, we're not good enough, and I'm not going to manage my team like we are good enough to win this thing.
And I've been there. I mean, I've done that. We go to the state tournament. It's like, okay, we win here, we're going to go to the state tournament. We're going to weigh in, 4 more times at most, right? You go weigh in all weekend, and we're not going to have a chance. We're going to get killed. We're down a couple guys. So what are we even doing right now? You know what I mean? And not that you throw a match, or not that, but I think every coach is open to that decision. Like, that's your job, right? You coach that team. I know where I'm at with my team, and we pulled the most out of our team as we could, and we're not good enough. I mean, we're not going to be able to compete here. So now, like, okay, well, what about the individuals? Like, the individual tournament's right around the corner. So what's best for some of those guys who do put the most time into this sport? You know what I mean? And want to get that right. So it is definitely a fine line. I do think, but you qualify, you compete, you go, you try to win. I get all that, but there is a fine line between, you got to be real. You know what I mean? You got to be able to take a look at your team and be real with yourself as a coach and as a program, and know sometimes that like your ultimate goal as a coach and your culture and your program and where you want to get to sometimes is different than what's best for the kids. You know what I mean? Like, I have a program. I want to be state champ. We want to do this. We want to do that. And that's great. That philosophy you have, but that can be different. And, as far as what is best for your kids at that time. And I'm always going to err on most times what's best for the kids, as a coach. And I think most coaches do,
Here's one last thing on teams, and then we'll shift into looking ahead a little bit to sectionals here. Jackson Arrington from Forest Hills, the number 152 pounder in the state, returning state champion. Here's just another thing with duels. Boiling Springs and Bishop McDevitt both wrestled Forest Hills, both beat Forest Hills. In no way mathematically did it make any sense to challenge Jackson Arrington. So here you have a kid who had on paper the opportunity to wrestle the number 2 kid, who's Andrew Christie from Bishop McDevitt, and the opportunity to wrestle the number 3 kid and Michael Dugan from Boiling Springs. Instead, he gets his arm raised twice, and those guys bump up to 160 and beat the kid there. Mathematically, you're trying to minimize the damage there. You're trying to, I think in both cases it made sense to go -3 at those 2 weights instead of potentially -9 or more, -12 maybe. Right. But it's just one of those things with big time duels. You didn't see Jackson Arrington break a sweat, and I would have loved to, and all the coaches involved would have loved to see those matchups, but they won duels in part because they make that decision.
No, and as far as Forest Hills, and this is where like the coin flip and all that, I feel like in matches needs to go out the window. But at the end of the day, that flip can be big where now like Bishop McDevitt and maybe Boiling Springs is forced to send out their 52 pounder first, to where then they can put Arrington on him. You know what I mean? And instead they don't, that's that thing. And that's why I say like the coin flip in wrestling is way too important. I think that, before each dual meet, the coach should fill out a sheet, write in the weights of who he wants where, not knowing what that other coach is going to write down. You submit it to the head table and you roll. You don't have to worry about, the coin flip being that big of a deterrent. The coin flip can determine a match. I mean, I've been a part on the good and bad end of that, and I just think it determines too much in wrestling. And, you have Jackson Arrington, like you said, out there 152. Well, then they forfeit to him and bump up. But, as a coach, your team states. This isn't individuals. Your job is to get your team to win. And so that's what McDevitt and Boiling Springs thought they had to do to beat them. And, it obviously worked. So, yeah.
Just one of those things. Well, let's look at individuals real quick. We'll kind of run down through. We don't have seeds or brackets yet for sectional tournaments, but they are coming up on Saturday. 6 different sites, 2 in AA, 4 in AAA. I just wanted to kind of go around what stood out to me at each of these sections, and you can kind of, I'll give you the first pick here. But looking at in AA section 1, which is at Susquehanna High School, you've got all of Perry County there, which is West Perry, Newport, Susquehanna, Boiling Springs there as well, Littlestown, Biglerville, just looking at schools that, regionally make the most sense to go there. It's a pretty good AA tournament. There's one other at CD East, but what stands out among the weight classes there? Because you've got a few really good ones.
Yeah, I think the weight class that I like is 113. You have Devin Jackson, Rafe Barber, and the McClendon kid there. I think that's an interesting little weight class. Should be some pretty good bouts there. I would probably tend to see Devin Jackson coming out on top. Hopefully, again, his health is good, and when we see him in the postseason, I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't. But with Devin, sometimes that can be an issue. 160 pounds, you brought up Jaden Barrick and here we have the Gannon Smith kid, Justice Hockenberry Folk from West Perry. And, Jaden Barrick had a nice weekend and like you said here, could kind of get in the mix there a little bit and cause those couple guys maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe just make them work a little bit, I don't know.
He brings that to the table where he can make them adapt that survive and advance. Like he's the guy who could be trailing Justice Hockenberry Folk, for example, 2-1 in the third period and lose 6-2 or 6-3, where
Sure.
okay, you had to sweat that one. You got to go out and beat this kid,
Sure.
especially the way that he's going now. I don't think he's really somebody that you want to run into.
Right. And then I see the two big boys from Trinity, 72 and 89 with Gray and Painter. I feel like Colin Neal's improved a lot. You know what I mean? So I'd like to see that matchup there. I think Tucker would be favored. You know what I mean? But still one that like I said, Colin Neal's improved a good bit, and I'd like to see that bout. But yeah, I think 113 and 113, 126 with Bounds. Mingy and Morrison there, Mingy or Morrison in there is pretty good as well. Carper and Ziegler at 38. Yeah, I mean, not a bad section. Not a bad section.
Carper is wrestling extremely well, and I want to see him carry that over the whole way through the postseason. I think he flashed. He beat the Connor Brown kid from Littlestown early last postseason, and then lost to him in districts. And I don't think I think he would probably be the first to admit. Trevor would say he just didn't have that same attacking mentality the second time around. And it's one of the things, man. Like Devin Jackson and Rafe Barber could literally wrestle at sectionals, districts, regionals, and states. Maybe they'll definitely, I mean, there's a high probability that they wrestle in the first 3 legs of that. And we saw that last postseason too, especially in these smaller brackets. You had to wrestle the same guy over and over and over again. It's just a unique challenge in the AA level.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, remember, last year they wrestled them in 2 days. Like, you know what I mean? You had like sectional,
back to back
with a district on like a Sunday and wrestled the same guys. You could, and I mean, like I said, it gets to that point where, you wrestle the same guy over and over, and it starts to chip away at you mentally a little bit. Like, a guy starts to close the gap, and then you start, I mean, the respect is earned a little more by the guy that keeps, and it gets tough. I don't know. I still feel pretty strongly in Devin Jackson's favor there, but you're right. You could see a Jackson Barber district final, and even they can meet again in regionals.
Looking at section 2, which is at CD East, you've got Bishop McDevitt and Northern Lebanon. I think two of the highlights, but Berks Catholic is going to be there. You see Camp Hill is going to be there. Mm-hmm. Lancaster Catholic's got a couple good guys, Brandywine Heights. So this is really like a really good melting pot of different sections of District 3. And so I think you have a Bishop McDevitt team that will be pretty well positioned to win that in the team standings. What about from an individual standpoint? I threw a few of these matchups together here.
Yeah, you did.
No all-star on all-star. So there's not a lot of like stud on stud, but some interesting weight classes.
I know who's going to win heavyweight. I feel like if I was a betting man, I feel like I would.
You would get such bad odds that I don't even think it'd be worth it.
No, it wouldn't be worth it at all. But the weight class there that I looked over and I kind of like was 189 with Werner and McLean, Tristan Bear. I think that's a interesting weight. You also have at 120 pounds, and you put this down, Eric Howe, Deisher, and Bradigan. All three have been to the postseason. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
before and return there. And again, I don't see many stud on stud matchups here, but that will set up a good week for the districts and the week after, I think. So with those two sections.
Looking at AAA, starting at Section 1, Governor Mifflin, a lot of the Berks teams are out there. We don't have a lot of locals there. The one weight class that jumps out to me, it's the only one I really wrote down, was Griffin Gonzalez wrestling JT Hogan. I know you got a chance to, your guy wrestled Griffin Gonzalez in the district finals, I believe, last year, right? Right. Good kid. He's a junior now. He's won a ton of matches. Now I just want to see, how built is he to make a deeper postseason run? With that in mind, I don't think Lebanon has put him in as many positions as they possibly could to wrestle tough guys, but it's gonna start right now where the level of opponent is gonna go up for him. I love Griffin Gonzalez though.
Yeah, I do too. I was impressed with him last year. He beat our guy at 132 in the finals. Although I will say, like, I felt like last year at our district, that weight class was kind of a wide open weight. You know what I mean? There was no real front runners there. So, and then they found out that next week where we went to the super regional, and I mean, we're there at 132 pounds. And I mean, I think they all got pinned in the first round, and I was like, oh man. But I do like Gonzalez. I think, his record is pretty incredible. You know what I mean? Like, with his total record is his career record at this point. But I'll take Griffin Gonzalez. I'd like to see him show up on the state level though, maybe, and get something done there. You know what I mean? I think he's a tough kid, and I actually think 152 pounds in our district is going to be a pretty good weight.
It is, yeah.
Belga and yep.
So Dobbins back.
Frontino, Dobbins,
yep.
Belga, Gonzalez. Yeah, that's a tough weight. So that'll be good in the district level too.
How about section 2 at Hempfield? That's where Central Dolphin is. And I know Swags kind of went out of his way to get some matchups in the regular season against some of these guys that they're going to see, even if it's just for seeding purposes. But the weight that jumps out is 106, where, a few of these names were in that weight class last year in the sectional tournament. So you got them back and all a little bit improved from where they were. And you've got, I think it's like for 4 of the top 5 or so guys from District 3 are in that one section. Yeah,
Tachi, Flanagan, Williams, Malavi. Yeah, I mean, those guys are all tough. I mean, all state ranked guys. So that weight class there. The other one that interests me is old 285. Old Stu up there. At 285, you have Ben Stewart. You have the Moosemon kid from Hempfield, and then the Washington kid. That's an interesting weight too. I do want to see the 60-pound final with Woolley and Garvik. I think that could be a pretty good final there. But I'm real interested in that 106-pound weight class in section 2. I think that's going to be a good.
And you've got 3 guys at 285 there. You could convince me any sequence in the end. 1, 2, 3. You could flip some coins, and I would buy it no matter what. That'll be pretty wide open among that group. And I like the 160 final. You've got a sophomore in Ryan Garvik, who he wrestled 145 last year. He's 160. He's not huge for 160. He's young. He's done a ton of wrestling though, and David Woolley's been around the block. So you're gonna have to beat that kind of crafty veteran in the finals there, presumably.
Yeah.
Section 3 at Mechanicsburg, I feel like in previous years you've seen more breathtaking firepower, but you bring together Northern, Cumberland Valley, Cedar Cliff, Carlisle, Chambersburg. Shippensburg's there. CD East has a couple guys who will be interesting. You have a lot of big schools and big programs under one roof. And when you do that, you're going to have some depth in these brackets, even though, some of them don't really have the high end head-to-head matchup that you'd love. You've got some that are pretty wide open and you're just going to have to grind your way through it.
Yeah. Again, I like a couple weight. I mean, a bunch of weights here, but 120 for Telly, Menser. And then you have the Mitchell kid from Cumberland Valley, who's going to be a tough out, I think. You know what I mean? In that weight class, which is pretty interesting. The other one there is 52. Frontino, Belga, and the young man from CD East, who's had a pretty good year. The name's slipping me. Help me out, Dustin.
Marcel McDaniels.
McDaniel. Yeah. That's it. Daniel. Yeah. I expect him to give both those guys a handful. So that'll be an interesting weight. I think 160s, like you said here, is pretty wide open. You have Brashino, Davenport, and D'Angelo. You know what I mean? Davenport from Chambersburg, D'Angelo from Carlisle, Brashino from Cumberland Valley. Again, just like the heavyweight at section 3, you could kind of like convince me of any order that they would finish there, and I'd listen to that argument. That'll be a pretty interesting weight there. The other final I'm looking forward to seeing there is the Diesel Kozer and Aiden Height at 189. 289 pounders that weren't really there last year, but I feel like have made big improvements to this year, and I don't know if they'll
absolutely.
I don't know if they'll be on that level, but as far as like a state medal, but both guys that have improved. So
they're guys who are on the fringe there who could make that jump. And I think, same deal at 160, where you've got a couple, what I would call super sophomores, and Anthony Brashino and Anthony D'Angelo, guys that I'd love to see take that next step forward in their career, but they're going to have to go through a guy like Ryder Davenport. At 215 pounds also, Looking at 215, Travis Armstrong from CD East, who looks really, really good. Looks like a different guy.
Yeah, he does.
And Zach Evans, who missed a chunk of the middle part of the year, about 3 weeks or so, he missed with injury. So I don't think he's quite gotten his due on a district or statewide level. And both of these guys, with a win, presumably again in the finals, whoever wins that one will be a huge moment for them, and I think can be something that kind of propels them into the rest of the postseason. You look at state rankings; they're both in that sort of like 8, 9, 10 range. They're both on that fringe of maybe being state medalists. But I think really strong for one section.
Yeah, I do too. I like both those guys. And, Zach Evans going out and placing that down at Escape the Rock. The Armstrong kid, like you said, just looks really good right now. Is wrestling really tough. That is a good weight there too. Should be a good final. I don't know. At 26, you got Schendeldecker, Trenton Walker. You mentioned the Clay Kozer kid from LD, who's obviously made some improvements. I don't see him tapping into those two at all yet, maybe, but I mean, he could be a guy that could help Lower Dauphin, get that ball rolling again here back at Lower Dauphin and, kind of get things rolling from that for them to get him to districts. I feel that, that he can do that.
There will be a couple surprises along the way, just trying to figure out who those surprises might be.
The team race in that section will be interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have Carlisle, who have some kids that'll do their thing, and Cumberland Valley will, and Chambersburg will. And, so you're going to see I think the team race there is going to be, somewhat interesting. So
it'll be pretty balanced. I think it's really going to come down to maybe not the guys that we're talking about, but can Carlisle get a few kids who like pin their way through consolations, or, I think it's going to come down to some of those other guys who are going to nip and tuck at the team race that can make a difference. I think, on paper, you don't have one truly dominant force here.
Right.
Cumberland Valley, I mean, depending on that, 152 is the place where they probably have the best odds of winning a sectional title, winning a weight. There's a possibility of them maybe having 0 or 1 sectional champ coming out. And the same's true, like Schendeldecker's, you can probably write him in with some pretty solid pencil at 126. I don't think anybody's beating him there, but who else is going to be at the very top of the podium for
who else is a lock? I'm with you. I'm with you.
There aren't a lot of locks here, and I think that's what's going to make it a little bit more interesting. But you don't have those. You got spoiled at that section some of these years. You got spoiled with Edmund Ruth wrestling Luke Nichter. You got spoiled with Luke Nichter wrestling Clayton Ulrey at sectionals.
No doubt, that section, historically speaking, is the best section, usually year in and year out. There's a little more parity this year than there isn't the high achieving guys, like you said, but it still is a darn good section in the district. I mean, full of mid-pen teams and I mean, I always like that section.
Last section 4 down at Southwestern, a lot of the York Adams teams. So a lot of the teams that we've talked about before, your Gettysburgs and your Dallas Towns and your Spring Groves, teams that aren't built around necessarily, 1 or 2 high-end stars, but guys who are going to compete probably at all 13 spots. Probably, safe to say that, most of those high-end teams are better dual teams than they are individual tournament teams. So you're going to have, I think maybe some parity down at Southwestern too, but again, just like with section 2 at Hempfield, that 285 pound, like that's a wide open affair. And I think to me, you look at that being wide open at Hempfield, Ben Stewart, Caleb Mussman, Tyrus Washington, and then at Southwestern, Ethan Miller from Central York, who's a pretty light, long, lean heavyweight, Hunter Bisking, Trevor Gallagher from Gettysburg, Michael Hershey from Spring Grove. It all points to me that Leighton Schmick from Carlisle is a prohibitive favorite in my eyes. I know Trevor Gallagher's has beaten him in the past, but it looks like Leighton Schmick has kind of passed him for good. It looks like Leighton Schmick is a solid favorite to win a district title at 285.
Yeah, I mean, all things, all crazy things. Yeah, I think crazy things can happen and whatnot. But I would agree with that. And in that section, 285 is that weight that I feel like is a pretty solid weight. All four of those guys can wrestle. But again, I still, like you said, I don't see any of those guys, testing Schmick there at the district level. I mean, maybe give him a little bit, but I do feel like he's a clear favorite. And it's crazy to say that and think that on the double A end, like Raleigh Robel is that much better than him. You know what I mean? In some way, shape, or form. I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, no, I'm excited here for the postseason. A time where for the guys wrestling, it's got to be more important to you. And in the individual season, you see it. Guys give up, they quit, they pack it in, they're ready for wrestling to be over. And the guys that it's more important to will always win out, man, and move on. So, yeah, it'd be an interesting weekend and kind of give us a good feel heading in the district where everything's at, for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so sectional, 6 different locations on Saturday. You've got districts, which will be a much more return to normal affair at CD East at Spring Grove for AAA, CD East for AA. That'll be the following weekend. Southeast regionals back in Bethlehem the week after that. So, District 3 is back to having that weekend off, which I think is deserved after the PIAA championship run. There's teams that across the state that are not wrestling sectional tournaments this weekend that are really in the room and getting healthy and getting their weight right and getting that opportunity. Right. At least in AAA around here, they'll get that chance still between districts and states. Then, of course, it all boils down to Giant Center 3 days, which is refreshing to see again. Oh, yeah. I felt like that everybody gets a medal who walks in the Giant Center doors didn't fuel the mindset of some guys. There was a mindset of complacency or a mindset of, I'm here, man. I got my medal. The rest of these guys are all better than me. What's the difference? I'm walking out of here with a medal either way.
Right. Well, I mean, hopefully here this individual season, we see District 3 kind of step up and do some good stuff in the individual postseason. I don't know. I feel like again in AAA, it's going to be difficult, man. I mean, it's going to be a tough go, and but we have some tough kids up in there, and we'll see how they make out here come postseason. I think, again, I think if I were to make a bet that the best guy in AA or AAA in District 3 to win a state title, the best chance is definitely Robel at heavyweight, and outside of him, it's tough for me to pinpoint. You know what I mean? Another state champ. So hopefully somebody can wrestle tough here and get through it and get through that gauntlet. But man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
For my money, just to wrap things up, Schindeldecker, really tough 126 pound weight class this year. You've had a couple freshmen who've come on, Dalton Perry from Central Mountain, the kid from Maddox Shaw from Thomas Jefferson. So you've got some work to do there. Then I think, just looking at Aaron Seidel from Northern Lebanon. It's a tough 106. He's behind the Louis Gill kid who we talked about, moved up to 120. So that he'll have to go through a state champ to get there. But that little kid, even though he looks like he's 4.5 and he's just like he has to get changed his diaper before he puts a singlet on. Like he is a tough competitor and somebody he's high on that list too.
I love it, man. I love it. But he is good. He is.
So the fun begins. We're through the team postseason and now we move into individuals. Stay with us. I promise you, we will be back. That's a vow from me to you, all dozen of you, that we will be back to break down to break down sectionals and look ahead to districts next week. So stay tuned with us here on the PennLive Wrestling Podcast.